Jesus, my joy in the morning. Jesus, my strength through the day. Jesus, I'll follow where you lead the way.
Luke chapter 20. Last week we started to look at a two-part parable that Jesus gave to those who were questioning his authority. What right does he have to be turning over tables there in the temple? What right does he have to be telling the religious leaders that what they were doing was not at all what God wanted them to be doing? And so they questioned him about his authority, and he gave them this parable, a two-part parable. He couldn't give them a straight answer because they weren't straight people. You see, that's the problem. When we're twisted, when we're crooked in any way, everything we hear, everything we see, everything we read takes on the twist. It takes on the same turns that we ourselves are twisted and turning in. That's why it says, to the pure, all things are pure. If we would have that heart that the Lord would help us to have, then it's not what you're looking at, it's the way you look at things. As I've often pointed out, we don't see things as they really are. We see things the way we really are. And until the lens is taken care of here in our own heart, the Lord does the best that can be done. In his kindness, in his mercy, he speaks to us in parables. Therefore, those who really want to see the truth will truly see the truth. If you have another agenda, then by his mercy, maybe you won't get too much out of it at all. But here he gives this parable. Their question there in chapter 20, verse 2, they spoke, saying to him, "Tell us by what authority you're doing these things. Who is the one who gave you this authority?" And here's his answer, spoken so that everyone could hear. Anyone who has ears to hear, let him hear. The answer, verse 9, he began to tell the people this parable. A man planted a vineyard and rented it out to vine growers and went on a journey for a long time. At the harvest time, he sent a slave to the vine growers in order that they might give him some of the produce of the vineyard. But the vine growers beat him up and sent him away empty-handed. So he proceeded to send another slave, and they beat him up also, treated him shamefully, and sent him away empty-handed. And he proceeded to send a third, and this one also they wounded and cast out. And the owner of the vineyard said, "What shall I do? I will send my beloved son. Perhaps they will respect him." But when the vine growers saw him, they reasoned with one another, saying, "This is the heir. Let us kill him so that the inheritance would be ours." And they threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. And what therefore will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He will come and destroy these vine growers and will give the vineyard to others. And when they heard it, they said, "May it never be." But he looked at them and said, "What then is this that is written?" Back in the words of the psalmist and in Isaiah as well. These words that say, "The stone which the builders rejected, this became the chief cornerstone. Everyone who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces, but on whomever it falls, it will scatter him like dust." So, like I said, a two-part parable. Even as I'm reading it again this week, I want to comment. If you're confused by something in the first part, tough luck. Yeah, I can't go back and go over all of it, but some of the most depthy things of what the Lord has to say are often not on the surface and therefore confusing at first. But we spent a whole week looking at that first part last week about the vineyard. Two-part. First, the tender fruit, and then secondly, the hard stone at the center of the fruit. And those two belong together. They grow together. Not just in this parable, but in the parable of life itself. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been feasting on Overstreet peaches. Just like Oberti olives, Overstreet peaches are a classic. They're not only organic, grown on a family farm. They're grown in the backyard of family, friends, people I've known and loved for I don't know, probably more than 30 years, like some of you other old folks out there. I knew them before they were dating, at least Ann I knew, and to see them then date and then to be the aficionado or whatever you're called when they vowed to get married, and then to watch them have their boys and to see those boys growing and branching out and bearing fruit. That's the tree. That's the fruit of life. And then for them to have a tree in their backyard that grows peaches, sweet peaches. And not only that, they're called free stone peaches. They're not only free because they gave them to me for free. The stone is free. You get a stone with the peach, but they're called free stone. I mean, I'm talking to a bunch of, at least we grew up in the valley. We know most of this sort of stuff. They're the kind of peaches you just stick in your thumbs and open it up, and the stone just comes right out, just like magic. Ooh. Throw out the stone, eat the peaches. Not like last week when I talked about the cherries and where I'm endangering my dental work there. The freestone peaches, how I love those peaches, and how I love the Overstreets for sharing them with me. And when I read this parable, that's my picture of this picture. The sweet, tender fruit on the outside, and yet something hard. A core of stone, not a heart of stone, but a living core of stone that makes for that sweetness on the outside. That's a picture that maybe it works for me. Maybe it'll help you. But it's a picture of a picture, the one that the Lord gives us here, first of all, of his kingdom and his power and his authority, being like the vineyard, the sweetness, the fruit. But at the center, there is that stone. There's that non-negotiable firmness that goes together with the fruit. That's the picture that he presents here. And when it comes to authority and power, which was the question, that's the same truth that needs to be applied all the time. The real source, if it's the source for Jesus, authority and power, where do you get off? Who says you can do what you're doing? If these are truths that apply to Jesus, certainly they apply to anyone who has any true authority, any real power. Where do you get the authority to do what you're doing? Yeah, it takes a lot. Turning over tables there in the temple. He pointed out this was supposed to be a house of prayer for all the Gentiles, for all the non-Jews, for all the people. You've put up your little bazaar here in this place. How did he have the right to tell them that? And of course, it's because it was true. The power, the authority came from the fact that it's true. He always walked in the truth. He always lived the truth. From the inside out, he was a true person. And his authority and his power was twofold, like this parable. And it's first of all that he had authority and power because he could prove it. And he proved it not by overturning tables. Anyone can overturn tables. Anyone can be an iconoclast. Anyone can just break things up. It doesn't take that much courage or ingenuity to just break things up, be a revolutionary. No, he delivered the goods. He provided the proof, and the proof is always in the fruit. The proof of life, the proof of humanity, the proof of being a real hero or someone truly great is always in the fruit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Jesus said if you see some prophet, some spokesman saying, I speak for God, say, where's the fruit? And if you don't find the fruit, it doesn't matter even if they're saying things that are true. They're not a true person. They're not a true prophet, not a true spokesman for God. Watch out for that. It's true regarding power and authority for all of humanity. It's true for each of us individually. You want to be great, you want to be someone? Well, there's the one thing that proves there's something really great going on in your life. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. Again, it's the fruit. That's true individually, which is the place we've got to start. It's true corporately. It's true communally, whether we're talking church or business. It's true nationally as well. Bear in mind that in the previous chapter, with that triumphal entry, when everyone's waving their palm branches and Jesus weeps and says, if you only knew the things. But you don't see the things that make for peace. And in that, as I pointed out to you going forward, the palm branches, the symbol of national greatness, they were humiliated. They were under the sway of Roman power. They wanted to get out from that. That was their nationalistic hope. And when they saw him as the son of David, the son of David, the Messiah, they saw national greatness, not the greatest greatness, just making their nation free from Rome and making them free to tax each other, making them free to take things into their own Israeli hands or Jewish hands, because they had no great regard for the Samaritans or for the Gentiles or a hatred for the Romans. And Jesus was preaching a different gospel in everything he did, everything he said, every story he told. He was telling them and showing them what real power, real authority, real greatness was about. So there on Palm Sunday, in the context of what we're looking at, that was their desire was, and what they thought would make for peace was, let's make Israel great again. I don't know if they had red hats, MAGA on there, make Israel great again, but that's what it was. It was make Israel great again. And of course, we joke, we laugh, because that's a big thing in the political cycle that's been going on. And things run in cycles, they always do. Humanity is humanity. And yet Jesus is not ashamed to call us family. It gives me hope. He says, look, I'm with you through all the seasons, through all the cycles of life, but there's a current cycle about greatness. And make America great again is the idea. But that's not something that Trump thought of or started. And I'm not going to do the Adolf Hitler thing that people tend to just tie one thing to another, connect the dots. See, isn't it clear? No, it's not that simple. But the fact is, there is a worldwide trend. And as far as who started it, that's always a good place to start a fight, huh? Who started this? Who started it? Whoever started it, there's a worldwide trend that just looking at the news, you can kind of see that something's been happening for a while. You have the whole Brexit thing with Britain wanting to get away from Europe. We don't want to be a part of the European Union. It's not good for us. We're called Great Britain. We want to make Great Britain great again. That's their slogan. And all of these different groups, you see the things happening in Turkey or the Philippines, places where you have someone strong who's appealing to something inside of the people that says, look, we're humiliated, we've been down, we want to be great, we want to move up. And that's understandable. I saw an interview of Emmanuel Macron, Macron, I don't know. I don't speak French. But he's the French president. And in the interview, I don't speak French, but he speaks English. Doesn't everyone adapt to us as it should be? Make America great again. Even though they work hard to learn our language. Emmanuel, his name is. Who does he think he is anyway? God with us. That's a joke. His parents named him that. But his name is Emmanuel Macron. He's the French president. At any rate, the interview, forgive me, get me back on track. In the interview, he said to whoever it was, Chris Wallace or someone, I want to make France great again. That's my political goal, to make France great again. There's a movement right now, make Italy great again, and that's part of their politics right now. And it's always easy to throw out a joke if you forget our history a little bit and say, make Italy great again, make France great again. Ha ha! They were never great. Ha 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 ha! Until you remember something like the Roman Empire. Yeah, there was some greatness there. Or Charlemagne or Napoleon. There's something in every national identity we can say where, you know what, we were not what we once were in terms of power and authority, and we want it back. And we want a strong person, because that's how you get it back. The kind of strength that says, let's arm wrestle, let's do some sort of a war, and let's prove who's really great. Okay, it's not about, like last week, I kept saying I'm not talking about politics, but you know darn well I'm talking about politics. Not because I'm talking about politics, what you should think, but because politics is people, and everything touches on the way we think. And until we all learn to think like Jesus, we're all a little bit crazy. Jesus is the one sound mind. And going back and looking and seeing how he sees things, and learning to hear how he hears things. And so, yeah, there's something going on right now that's all about this becoming great. And when I talk about it nationally, you can see something big on a big picture, then always bring it back down to the individual choices, because that's really where your vote counts the most. What do you want? What's greatness for you? But you can see it on a big worldwide scale, and it's just I don't know how long it's going to last. I don't know what it's going to lead to. I know that 40 years ago, the fears, the end times, last days fears were all about a one world government. It was all about this thing happening in Europe, 10 toes. They're forming this thing called a European economic market. And I remember when that was future, ooh, scary, scary, scary. We're up to 7 toes, now 8 toes. Oh, it's got to be the revived Roman Empire, on and on and on until it was like 17 toes, you know. And there's still people trying to understand the times based upon that sort of reasoning. But it did what it did, and now the direction it's going is break apart. There was all of this union. Now it's like, hey, it's almost like a marriage, you know. I will, no, I don't, I won't anymore. This ain't working. It's not working for me. And if it's not working for me, it ain't great. That's the cycle. That's happening in the world right now. And so, you know, maybe 40 years ago, it was the fear of new world order. Now I think the fear should be new world war, because that's the tendency. Don't forget, most of us weren't alive, or at least thinking that, but a lot of this, let's get it together, make international laws, came out of a couple of horrible world wars. So the direction is not necessarily a good direction, but it's not this way or that way, left or right in terms of direction. It's just understanding, what is greatness? You want to make your own life great? Great. But until you put goodness at the center of your greatness, until you realize the proof is in the fruit, the real measure of any greatness is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, all of that. Until you see that, you're blind. That's real greatness. The proof of power is never who you can blow up. It's who you can build up. What you can do to build up your own life and your own sense of being loved by God and your ability to help your brother to do the same. And the evidence of all the years' efforts has always been something called the harvest. You bring in the fruit. It's not a matter of all the statistics. How did we do this year? Where's the fruit? What happens at the harvest? And of course, the people in Jesus' time, they understood that. They were agrarian type people. And so he's always talking about the harvest. He's always talking about where's the fruit. And when these religious leaders ask him about his power and authority and the source of it, he makes it clear in the first part about the vineyard, about bringing in the fruit. He says, if you use your power and authority, if you use it to abuse, you lose. Use, abuse, lose. Isn't that clever? It's guaranteed. Whatever you use to abuse, you lose. That's a summary of the first section, the fruit section of this parable. And he said it to them. He said, you know, Luke gives us the abbreviated version. Matthew tells us that it was these leaders themselves who gave the verdict and then realized, oh my gosh, we're talking about ourselves. He said, what shall be done to these owners who abuse all the servants and then kill the son? Why, he'll bring those wretches to a wretched end, and he'll give over the vineyard to someone else who will bring forth the fruit thereof. And Jesus said, yeah, that's it. Here Luke puts those words in the mouth of Jesus. It says, verse 16, what's going to happen? He will come and destroy these vine growers, and he'll give the vineyard to others. You know, the only ones who get thrown out of the vineyard are the ones who are throwing other people out of the vineyard. The only ones who won't fit are the ones who are in authority saying, you don't fit, you don't fit, you don't fit. And the destruction is self-destruction. You do it to yourself. That's just the way it works. And God, in all of his kindness and mercy, is saying, quit doing that to yourself. Quit doing that to others. Quit doing that to yourself. Grow up. It's supposed to be a vineyard. Vineyards are beautiful places. Vineyards are supposed to be joyous places. Vineyards are supposed to be, it's what this world can be if we all start learning to listen to Christ. It's what our own lives can be if we individually choose to do so. But that whole idea, the vineyard and the destruction that comes because of the choices made with the authority given to you, and he will come and destroy the vineyard. He'll give the vineyard to others. And that's where we had to quit last week because we ran out of time. And that's That's why I keep overlapping and going back. Because some of you have the nerve to skip out on church once in a while, and you weren't here. But also because even if you're here, I forget. I look back, I see it again. And this last statement about he'll give the vineyard over to others, and this is where I ended last week, because a lot of times we say, well, who did he give it over to? He took it away from the nation Israel. They're not the chosen people. And then we say, oh, well, it's who now? It's the church? Yeah, yes, it is the church. But then we fight over that. Which church? Which group? Which organization? I grew up in the Roman Catholic Church, wonderful background, wonderful blessings, a lot of good things to be thankful for, but problems as well, problems everywhere. But if you ask them, they'll say, well, it's the Roman Church, and that's why the authority and power resides in the Pope, because we got this historical timeline. And the Eastern Orthodox churches will do the same, and then others on other bases. They'll all argue over that. We are the real vineyard. Some of them just call themselves, we're the vineyard, and that makes us so. But you know what? The church isn't an institution. I don't want to be institutionalized, even though I might need to be. The church is a living and breathing body. It's the body of Christ. And when we say that, don't look on Wikipedia and try to define what that is. Look around you. It's the body of Christ. It's the body that belongs to the Son of Man. It's everybody or anybody who chooses to have him as their head. And not head in title only, head like your head. Anyone who wants to see through his eyes, hear through his ears, speak with his mouth, think with the mind of Christ. If anyone wants that, that's the body of Christ at work in the world. And what a blessing to see people who see as he does and talk as he does. And wherever that happens, that's wonderful. And that's really where the vineyard is to this day. That's where the fruit is. He didn't give it over to an institution. He kept it in his own hands. I am the vine, you're the branches. If you just abide in me, you'll bear a lot of fruit. If you just choose to wait and hear things through my ears and see things through my eyes, not just knee-jerk reaction, this is how I feel like acting, or this is what someone told me I should do, getting in line, lockstep, moving with a movement. No. Have your own individual connection to the one who loves you and who will teach you to love others. And so that, like the vine and the branches, that's where the fruit comes from. That's the way it works. It's the fruit of a family. Kind of like the Overstreet peaches, but better, but kind of like. It's the fruit of family. It's the fruit of friendship. It's the fruit of knowing and loving people. It's the fruit of loving people once you have known them and you no longer like them nearly so much. We took a vow, we all got together, we pinky swore, now it's Brexit time, now it's exit time, now it's split time, now it's divide time. Again, we have back and forth, but we never really grow up until we move on with the essence of what love is. And before I'm done today, I'll remind you again of what love is. God is love, yes. But the specifics of love, and so that's greatness in any sense. And the fruit is the fruit of family, redeemed family, God's family. That's the first half, that's the first aspect. Now for the hard part. Now for the stone. Now for the second portion. There's a core of stone in this fruit. Not a heart of stone, but a living stone. At the center, a living solidity, non-negotiable. It's hard. And that's what Jesus says when they heard this thing about the vineyard being out of their hands from now on. They said, may it never be, but here's why it must always be. He looked at them and he said, what then is this that is written? The stone which the builders rejected, this became the chief cornerstone. Everyone who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces, but on whomever it falls, it will scatter him like dust. That's not a threat. I know that because Jesus doesn't threaten. That's not the hammer hanging over. Look, if you don't want the sweet fruit, if you don't want the tender bait, here comes the hammer. Love doesn't work that way. But it is a very loving warning, saying at the center there's something hard, there's something non-negotiable. You can fight it, but you can't win. You can smack your head up against a brick wall all day long. Something's got to give. It's going to be your skull at some point. Then maybe you'll have some sense. Quit doing it. But at the center of all this tender love is something hard and firm. Something written in stone. It's the law of God. Not a heart of stone. Sometimes what we call tough love is just a nice word for tough luck. I really don't care, and the easiest way for me to get out of this is saying, I'm just giving you tough love. No, I'm not. We have to be careful about how we put religious spins on some of this stuff. But there is a love that does say no and yes, but the reason is always the same: love. There's a real concern, but there's a sense that says, look, the best thing I can do for you may not at all be what you want me to do, but it is seeking the best. And sometimes, as this whole aspect of the stone at the center of the fruit points out, sometimes the will of God can seem really hard. It's non-negotiable. What does God want? And I'm talking about the will of God, not what someone says is the will of God. There's a lot of folks that'll say, that's what God wants, that's the way it is. Tough luck. You find out there's so many things based on the Bible that 50 years ago, 100 years ago, this is the will of God. This is what a woman should do, this is what a man should do, this is what a kid should do. It's the will of God. We're so sure of it, we'll fight a civil war over it. Because it's the will of God. Both of us fighting for freedom, states' rights versus federal rights, or human rights, whatever. We're crazy. But in our craziness, if you can come to the one who's sane, come to Jesus and say, Lord, I want to hear through the ears of love and see through the eyes of love and think with the thoughts of love. And that's really the goal. But all that being said, and maybe I always say too much, I don't know, maybe that's why I run over time here. But I feel like I have to separate out what people say God says. Because you hear that more often than not versus what God actually says. But do understand that even when it is what God, in all of his love and tenderness, is actually saying, there will be times when it seems really hard, when it seems like, Lord, even just to wait seems like cruelty. And when those times happen, when it seems like it's just so hard, understand it's not a heart that's hard. It's like the seed of the fruit. And it has to be that way, just like the bones of our body. There has to be a rigid, solid structure on which all of the tenderness and all of the compliant and soft portions, the warm portions, can be. And so with that hard aspect, if you ever find in your life that, man, the will of God just seems almost cruel. If it is indeed the will of God, wait. Be patient. He's patient. Understand this, that you'll find his workings are marvelous. The stone which the builders rejected doesn't work, doesn't fit, don't want it. It's the most marvelous aspect. The things that we will marvel over in heaven, I think, will often be the things that we're miserable about here on earth, because we wouldn't, by faith, accept the fact that he's working together, all things together for good. And the hard thing that just doesn't seem to fit, it's marvelous. And that's the idea here, and that's the idea in many places. And the problem with these religious leaders, maybe none of you are religious leaders. Good. I don't want to be either. Call no man leader, teacher, father, rabbi. I hope to be a good friend and a good brother to you folks. I hope you be that way to me, please. But the religious leaders of that time, the problem they had is they had their plans, they had their purposes, they had their agendas, they had their diagrams, their blueprints, their religious schemes, their religious designs, and when Jesus came along, they couldn't find a place to fit him. And they couldn't find a place to fit him because he was too much for them. Oh, you can always find a little cubby hole to put your plastic Jesus on, someplace on the dashboard where Jesus will bless all your driving, no matter where you drive. There he is. When I was a kid, I'd drive with my brothers. They'd drive the car. My parents would make sure that there was always a Jesus statue on the dashboard, because the dashboard was solid steel, and my brothers were They're brothers. But it's just so nice to know that there's Jesus, no matter where you go. There's always a little place for a little Jesus. But when the real Jesus comes along, if you don't start with him, you'll find there's no place to fit him in. And that's what the religious leaders found in there. When the real Jesus came along with all this love the Gentiles, love the Romans, love the Samaritans, no place to fit him. They rejected. That's the chief cornerstone. And as was spoken through in Isaiah, it's marvelous. It's marvelous in our eyes. They would have thought it was horrible because they're our brothers and sisters as well, because we're of same nature to them. I would venture to guess there are some things in our own life that we think are just horrible, that we might later say, oh, it's marvelous. Why didn't I wait? Why didn't I have more faith back then? But for these folks, that's horrible. We got to find a way to get rid of this one. Throw him out. Throw him out. And how wrong they were. And always an exhortation for each of our lives where it comes to our own choices. Don't try to fit him in. Don't have a fixed plan that later you hope to fit him in. Start with him. He's the foundation. He's the beginning. Start with a purpose of love and kindness. Start with a purpose to do the right thing, not to be great, but just to be good. Start with him. Start with him, and then you'll find that at some point everything will fit together. All things will work together. But he wouldn't fit because he was too great. And if you find sometimes in your life that you don't fit in because other people say you don't fit in, you're in good company. And they may belittle you, but it may be because you're more than they have room for. It may be because you are greater than what they think you are. And so they want to pigeonhole you, but you're not a pigeon, and you won't fit in that hole. And so they say, I don't want anything to do with you. Understand, that's the way people treated Jesus. So follow Jesus, build on the foundation. Oh, your life will fit. Things will start to come together in your life. And you'll see for yourself, look, everything works together for good to those who are called according to that purpose. Power and authority. Where do you get the power and authority? Jesus said, I have it. Because I'm the truth. I'm the way, the truth, the life. You know, we hear all of that. Power and authority. Jesus had absolute power and authority, which is a terrifying. Any man or woman, any human being, any of my brothers and sisters who has absolute authority, that is terrifying. And we have an axiom as though it's the only thing that can possibly be, and that is that absolute power, absolute authority is absolutely corrupting. And with anyone but Jesus, it would be. But Jesus is the one. He had and still has absolute authority. And when he rose from the dead, he said, all power and authority are in my hands. And he hasn't given it over. All power and authority is in my hands. And that's terrifying until you trust him. Until you learn that surrounding that core of stone, that non-negotiable truth, is sweetness and tenderness and all of the fruit of the Spirit. Perfect love casts out all fear. I'm glad that there's a core of stone at the center. I'm glad that Jesus is all of that. The fruit and the stone, the whole thing put together. And it's just a reminder, if you need reminding, that because at the core is the law of God, and the law of God isn't just 10 commandments set in stone. The whole of the law is love God with all your being and love your neighbor as yourself. On this all of the law hangs, said Jesus. And just understand that nobody breaks God's law, ever. No one breaks God's law. They break themselves. God's law is still the law. Love will always win. People who fail to love fail the most. And they break themselves and they twist themselves and they make themselves crooked. And then no matter what anyone says or whatever they hear or read, it all takes a twist. It all has a spin. It all gets crooked. Because they themselves will not align with the chief cornerstone. So for all of you, understand this. You want to align yourself with love, you'll win. That's true greatness. Be patient, wait. Some of the things that seem so hard, it'll be just such a marvel later. We sang a song earlier from Isaiah, unexpectedly. And when I sing these songs from Scripture, I think of the Scriptures all through. There are story after story after story in a family, in a nation, some sort of calamity, not where people had great faith. They had no faith at all. They might be dead. But the Lord still lifted them up. The Lord still got them through. That's the one I put my little mustard seed of faith in. The one who is firm and will not be broken. And that is what keeps me from being broken. And I say that last thing about being broken, and yes, I can see your lights going on in your eyes. He said last thing. But you know, I can have a 4-part last thing. But still, because I love my friends and the people who watch the kids, and I never go too terribly long. I always end late every time, which is on time, but it's always late. But at any rate, I'm right at the bottom of my time. And when I say about broken, that we break ourselves, I don't think we always have to learn the hard way. That last phrase, let me just look at it with you one more time. Everyone who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces, but on whomever it falls, it will scatter him like dust. The stone stays one way or the other. Some fall on him, and they're broken. Some wait, and the stone falls on them, and then they're scattered like dust. That's the picture, and seeing that picture gives me the sense that there's only one of two ways. Either you fall on him and you're broken, or you wait later, he falls on you, and then you're scattered like dust. Which do you want? You know what? I'll fall on him and be broken, because getting scattered like dust. In other words, truth wins, love wins, justice wins, but it's worse if you wait, in terms of sooner or later. Line up with him, love him, receive him sooner or later. If you wait, it just gets worse. Okay, I accept that, but you know, until this week, until this time through, as many times as I've looked at this, until this time through, I've always thought of this as only two different choices. One way or the other, you're going to get broken. One way or the other. No one stays intact. There is no easy way. There's no soft way. You're going to get broken now. Be broken for Jesus. Or when he comes back, woo, those who were not broken for Jesus, they're going to get scattered like dust. And there's a truth to that. But I realized this week, you know, that Jesus certainly said that, but is he saying that that's the only two ways? I mean, the fact he's the rock, that's not going to change. And those who fall on him, stumble over him, like they'll be broken. They're going to have to break their ways, and then those in the end, okay, but is that the only way? And I realized, you know what? I got that idea of you're going to be broken or you're going to get scattered like dust. I got that idea probably more from my religious upbringing than I did from the Bible. I probably got it more from Bob Dylan than I did from Jesus, you know? I would not feel so all alone. Everybody must get stoned. I was brought up on that. I was brought up on Sister Mary Elephant and Bob Dylan, and you know, it was just like, look, one way or the other, you're going to get smacked. So the altar call was come up here and fall down and get broken, or if you don't do that, Jesus is coming back, and then you're going to get scattered like dust. What's it going to be, buddy? Good news, huh? In Jesus' name. But you know, at this point in my life, I think I finally realized you don't always have to learn the hard way. You don't have to stumble over them. You don't have to be broken. You can be built up by just listening to him. You don't have to learn the hard way. This is not choosing one of two hard courses, and each of them are going to be painful and terrible. I think that if you follow the Lord from the earliest opportunities you have, your life is going to be rich and blessed. You don't have to make it so hard on yourself. The law of God is firm, but he's not harsh. We make it so hard on ourselves. You don't have to. I mean, granted, maybe most of us did go to the school of hard knocks. Maybe we did learn the hard way, but it's not like, and now you got to learn the hard way. You don't have to learn the hard way. That's good news. You don't have to learn the hard way. You can listen today. You can believe him today. You don't have to go through a few courses and fail and have everything work out wrong because you were so stubborn. You don't have to go to the school of hard knocks. You don't have to go to Knucklehead Academy. You don't have to. There's a better way. You don't have to be left or right. You don't have to be which choice of two evils. You can choose something good. There's always a middle ground. There's always a better way. Always. Always. There's always a better way. And when you think there isn't, it's just like, oh man, both of them are bad, broken or scattered like dust. Just the better way. I promised I'd leave you with this. I'll show you a better way. This is what Paul says. I'll show you a still more excellent. I'll show you the better way. If I were to speak with tongues of men and of angels but don't have love, I've just become a noisy gong and a clanging cymbal. And if I have the gift of prophecy and know all mysteries and have all knowledge, if I have all faith and I could actually move mountains, not just talk about it, if I could do it, but if I have love, I'm nothing. If I give all of my possessions to feed the poor, if I delivered my very body over to be burned for some holy cause, but if I don't have love, it profits me nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love isn't jealous. Love doesn't boast about great things. It's not puffed up. Love isn't rude. Love isn't selfish. Love doesn't get ticked off. It's not easily provoked. Love doesn't keep score, doesn't hold a grudge, doesn't take into account things that were done against it. Love doesn't rejoice over what's wrong. It rejoices. It takes its entertainment and happiness over what's right. And love bears all things, love believes all things, love hopes all things, love endures all things, love never fails. When I was a child, I used to speak as a child, think as a child, reason as a child. But when I finally grew up, I set those things aside. Right now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know in part, but then I will know fully, just as I also have been fully known. So what remains is faith, hope, love, these three. But the greatest of these is love.
Jesus, my joy in the morning. Jesus, my strength through